Hello everybody, this is Chris and welcome to Melchester Model Railway and a continuation of the layout tour. In part 1 I gave a general overview of the entire layout and then focused on the main station area, which is what you're looking at here. You can see the up and down main lines on the left here, the terminus platforms in the middle and the branch line platform on the far right. The line branching off to the left that you can see is the reversing loop, which I mentioned in part 1. In this view, as this Crompton leaves platform 2 and this 2-car electric multiple unit departs, you can see how the main lines and the branch lines come together in this area to the west of the station. The main purpose of this is to bring the 3 main running lines together as soon as possible to the west of the station, leaving plenty of space for the engine shed or maintenance depot and its associated sidings. This aerial view of the track plan shows exactly what I mean. As the 3 main running lines start to converge on the inner side of the baseboards, sidings start to fan out on the outer side. These are accessed from platforms 4 and 5. These lead into the engine shed area, more on that shortly, while the running lines curve sharply around to the right. It's a structure that's easy to miss, but hiding just behind this beam is the Dapol water tower, which I constructed from a kit and then painted. The idea of it is that I needed a water tower to feed the 4 water columns on the station. To the right of this is an abandoned 4-wheel coach body, which is now used as a mess room for loco drivers and other railway staff. Again, it's another Bachmann building made of resin. It's sited close by to this gated entrance and exit for railway workers. And the 6-foot concrete fence that runs along the perimeter is a typical Southern Railway product. Just one of the many prefabricated concrete items produced by the Southern Railway at their Exmouth Junction cement works. These items included, amongst other things, fence panels, footbridges, line-side huts, lamp posts, platform facing. All of this is covered in the excellent book Southern Nouveau, which gives a history of these items and of the cement factory at Exmouth Junction. To the right of this is the recently installed Bachmann diesel fuelling point, and that comes at the end of this little spur siding, which is the ideal spot for refuelling my diesel locomotives. I sometimes like to swap over the back scenes at this point in exchange for a dockside one, so that I can replicate scenes from Southampton docks where shipments of bananas were brought in and transferred into steam-heated vans ready for transportation up to London. If you'd like to see that video, click on the link in the right-hand corner. This is also the part of the layout where there's the most track at any one point, and of course where the all-important Melchester West signal box is located. This is a Bachmann model, but strictly speaking is a Great Central Railway signal box rather than a Southern one. And when I installed it at this location, there weren't any other suitable Southern-based signal boxes available, perhaps with the exception of a couple in the Art Deco, more modern 1930s style. But I really wanted a more traditional signal box, so this is the one I chose. As you can see, the roof lifts off, and I really went to town on detailing the interior and adding lighting. First of all, fitting a false back wall using scraps from a Metcalfe card kit, and then adding the ratio signal box interior. This includes the lever frame, levers, block instrument shelf, block instruments, track plan, and even the level crossing wheel, which I didn't add, as well as a desk, train register, angle poise lamp, stove, bookshelf, and comfy armchair. The interior is illuminated with this LED light bulb, which makes the signal box a nice feature when operating the layout at night. It would be a lovely place to sit on a wet afternoon, toasting muffins by the stove and watching the comings and goings in Melchester Station, as well as the nice views across to the engine shed. I will, however, in the not too distant future, be replacing this signal box with a more authentic XLSWR one, which I've already purchased and is of a similar size, so watch out for a future video on that. This corner of the layout provides an area for the engine shed as the main lines curve off round to the right. It's an area where steam engines can be stabled and serviced, recoaled and watered. This is a rather snowy scene from my Christmas 2021 video called Christmas Eve and There Was No Room at the Shed. If you want to experience 40 minutes of unadulterated engine shed bliss, then click the link in the corner to see this video. In his book Track Layouts, part of the Aspects of Modelling series, Anthony New has a chapter precisely about engine sheds, their function, and how they operate in practice. This I found to be very useful and helped me provide some of the most basic necessities for realistic operation. The shed itself and its associated buildings are Metcalfe card kits, most of which have been modified in some way. The roofs have been replaced by Will's plastic sheet slate tiles, and other small details like window sills and drain pipes and lighting have been added. I often find that the white window frames that come with these Metcalfe kits are far too strident, so I always tone them down to some degree using a soft pencil, in this case quite considerably, so as to give the effect of metal window frames. Let's take a brief look inside. I've added LED lighting which is suspended from the roof trusses, and you may notice that I've cut out 4 of the window panes to create drop open windows. Part of the inspiration for the shed at Melchester came from that at Basingstoke, which in 1950 had a very small allocation of locomotives. In this picture the chimney cowls are quite noticeable, and I added my own to the Metcalfe model using squares of card and track pins. As Anthony New points out in his book, many sheds were small, so you don't need to model Old Oak Common or Haymarket to get a good effect, but prototypical realism is the aim. We just need to provide a few bare essentials, a small covered shed for basic maintenance out of the rain or snow, an inspection pit, small coal stage, a bit of trackside where ash and char can be dumped, and a turntable, or in my case a reversing loop as I didn't include a turntable. To appreciate how Melchester Shed is used, let's follow this H1 as it arrives. On arrival, the crew manning the locomotive would usually sign off at the offices, often attached to the shed. Here is the office, another Metcalfe card building, next to what is the sand house. This is where sand was kiln dried to fill the sandboxes on locomotives to aid grip to the rails. The locomotive would be left somewhere convenient for the disposal crew. In this case, the siding provided for the coaling stage. This is a small Bachmann model that doesn't require much space. Additional coal staiths are provided for the storage of coal, and a hand-operated crane, also from the Bachman range, which is used to transfer buckets of coal. In this scene, the coal is being unloaded from a wagon. These were often kept in the vicinity of the depot. The adjacent siding is the location for the ash pit. Once the H1 has been replenished with coal, it will move to the ash pit to have its fire dropped, and, if you watch closely, creating some clouds of ash in the process. With the fire dropped and the ash emptied from the grate, at some point the smoke box door should also be opened and the char shovelled out. Despite no fire, there is still enough pressure in the boiler for the locomotive to manoeuvre to the water column to have its water tank filled. The water columns in the depot are fed by this large water tower. This is a Bachman resin model. The locomotive could then be manoeuvred into the shed. Covered sheds were mostly provided for the comfort of the fitters who had to work on the locomotives to repair and maintain them. Although if you visited one, you wouldn't think comfort was very high on the company's agenda. But replacing axle boxes, piston glands, gauges and other sundry items was all best carried out under cover. Inspection pits by the shed would allow the driver or fitters to check and oil the motion. During the week, steam locomotives were used pretty intensively and rarely had much chance to cool down between shifts. The photos you sometimes see of a shed absolutely clogged with locomotives nose to tail were usually taken on a Sunday, or in this case Christmas Eve, when most of the shed's allocation of locos would be resting. At many sheds, locomotives spent their on-shed time sitting in the open, come rain or shine. As we leave the engine shed area, the main lines take their sharpest curve on the layout, with the inner line being radius 2, and the scene is broken up by this footbridge, which I scratch built. The stairs came from a Metcalfe footbridge kit, which were very useful. It's a favoured spot for railway enthusiasts as well, hoping to catch a glimpse of the locomotives on shed at Melchester. There's not a lot of room for scenery, so nestled beside the footbridge is this small house with its tiny garden and small vegetable patch, more of the ubiquitous Southern Railway concrete fencing as well. That deck chair does look like an inviting spot to spend a summer's afternoon watching the trains go by. Just beneath the far side of the footbridge, two sidings fan out and extend into the far corner of the layout. I use these for storage of goods wagons and occasionally coaching stock. The only other building in the vicinity is this small Southern Railway prefabricated concrete line-side hut, another product of the Southern Cement Works at Exmouth Junction. These buildings can still be seen today on the region, although they do seem to be rapidly diminishing in number. As the three running lines complete their curve, ready for the commencement of what I call the long straight, this is where my countryside section begins, and this side of the layout becomes much more rural in character, given over mostly to farmland. Bottom Field is currently being used for grazing sheep. It contains a milking parlour, another Bachmann model. At various times it's been used for different purposes. It was used as a Christmas tree plantation, which featured in my 2020 Christmas special. Click the link in the right-hand corner if you'd like to see that. And once a year, every November the 5th, the old Melchesterians Cricket Club hold a bonfire where Dr. Beeching is burned in effigy. The land on the far side of the tracks gradually rises in height, leading up to the farm cottage. In Middle Field, some cows are currently grazing, but during the Queen's Jubilee visit to Melchester, it was the location of a beacon that illuminated the route of the royal train as it returned back to London. If you'd like to see that three-part video, click the link in the right-hand corner. Unfortunately, the beacon toppled over later that night, setting fire to the farmer's wheat field. The fields in the foreground are wheat and barley. These are plastic kits by Bush. They're quite a laborious process to put together, as each stalk is individually modelled and forms a row of wheat that then has to be glued tightly together. It's a time-consuming process, but I think the final effect is very good. It is not a product that I've seen featured very much on British layouts. The fields form a nice foreground for one of my favourite filming locations on the layout. This was also the location I used to add a temporary baseboard in order to construct a scene for my Christmas 2022 special, A Melchester Carol. I needed a location and house for the Fat Controller. Here again is that utterly horrifying moment. The Fat Controller returns home on Christmas Eve and is haunted by the spectre of Dr. Beeching, who appears on the door. If you'd like to see the full film, click the link in the right-hand corner. At the top of the cutting lies the farmer's farm cottage. I must confess I built the house as the ideal location I myself would be happy living in. No neighbours, an idyllic setting, and overlooking the railway. The cottage is again a Metcalfe kit, with the card roof replaced by a plastic one, guttering and rainwater goods added, and, like most of the buildings on my layout, lighting installed. I had particular fun designing the garden, with its patio, flower beds, shed and path which leads through to an entirely separate vegetable garden, with its own greenhouse. The vegetable garden is another Bush kit, and they really are quite good at this sort of thing. You'll find separate beds for tomato, peas, cabbage, cauliflower, and even pumpkins. You might even spot Snowy the cat sunning herself on the garden path while she helps to keep the mice away. The entire scene is nicely framed by a well-trimmed privet hedge. cottage. In the evening, a single LED light bulb illuminates an upstairs bedroom. Next to the cottage is Top Field, a wheat field made from another bush product. This is a ready-made mat glued into position. It features a crop circle or formation, which is a nod to another interest of mine, as I've been a crop circle researcher and chronicler since the late 1980s, when the first circles started appearing in parts of Hampshire not far from where I was living at the time. Here I am entering a formation in the summer of 2023. The bush depiction is actually quite accurate and captures the spirit of the dumbbell type formations. These were circles connected with narrow corridors, which evolved from simple circles in about 1989 to 90. The three smaller, apparently random circles near the main formation were called grape shot. There were often no signs of any human access in the form of a beaten down path for these smaller circles to have been made, so it's great to see these replicated on the bush model. The wheat field ends at this fence, and a stile takes you over it onto a small path that leads through the graveyard to the church. The gravestones are a Hornby product. I had to include a church somewhere on the layout, as in real life I spend a lot of time playing the organ in them. I recorded the theme tune to this channel on my instrument at home. This Bachmann resin model is a low-relief three-quarter view of a church, but which features the whole tower, so it can fit in a small space while still making its presence felt. Next door is the vicarage, another small Metcalfe cottage, which I've also modified to make into a low-relief building. Here's the vicar admiring the flowers growing in his garden, and I'd be surprised if that shed doesn't house his model railway. You can see the larger sister church down in the village on the Pico back scene. At this point on the railway, the embankment gives way to a scratch-built retaining wall as tracks spread out as we enter the second station on the layout, which I'll be looking at in part 3. Opposite this is the second signal box on the layout, sited at the junction formed by the reversing loop, which traverses across the access well. This is a special commission by Melchester Model Railway Centre of an LSWR Type 4 signal box. It is based on the one at Bude. This is another resin model made by Bachmann, and like the earlier signal box, has a removable roof. I haven't yet fitted any interior detail, but I have added lighting. Apart from its proximity to the second station on the layout, the signal box is in a more remote location and is accessed by staff via this gravel path. You can see the signalman's bicycle leaning against a rather old-fashioned barley twist lamppost, and I've added a few other details such as relay boxes and telegraph pole. The whole site is enclosed by these iron railings. A lamp hut is located on the other side. These were small buildings constructed to store lamps and lamp oil, a large number of which were needed to illuminate semaphore signals and provide lighting for station buildings and platforms. They were usually located adjacent to signal boxes and stations. A ventilator cowl in the roof prevents the potentially explosive build-up of fumes from the lamp oil, hence the addition of fire extinguishing sand buckets as an extra safety measure. Well, that concludes part 2 of this layout tour. Please join me in part 3 when we explore Melchester's other station and beyond. Until then, thank you for watching and bye for now.